Allan Lewis. Mr. Lewis has had a distinguished career in financial services and strategic planning in Jamaica and the United States. His professional career has been underpinned by extensive training and experience in financial risk management. He commenced his career at Life of Jamaica, where he attained the designation Associate of the Society of Actuaries.
The Pension Fund Association of Jamaica is an organization representing broad interests involved in the pension fund industry here in Jamaica. So we represent members of pension funds, we represent sponsors of pension funds, trustees, investment managers and administrators. And our role is to advocate for the interests of our members, of the persons I mentioned earlier. And we do that in a number of ways, particularly in lobbying and discussing with the regulators, that's the FSC, and the government of Jamaica, who sets the policies that govern pension funds for policies or promulgations that are in the interest, that we think are in the interest of our members. Look like about 26. Tanisha looks like about, looks like about 22. And I would say to you that one day, although you are young today, one day you will be 62, 72, and 82, and less likely to be able to earn the type of funds to sustain your lifestyle. So you have to prepare for that by saving now to build a nest egg that would be sufficient to maintain you and your family members if at the time, because you may have children and grandchildren, and also to maintain your own health during the period of when your earning income is not as strong as it is now. And that's what the mission of the PFAJ is, primarily to help educate and motivate persons to prepare as early as they can for their retirement years by setting aside their nest egg. The issue of preparing for retirement is more than just pensions, because we need to make it easy for people to save and enter into these plans. So for instance, if it is very difficult for a helper or somebody who is not working in a major company that has human resource departments and other professionals whose jobs are to help their team members to subscribe to these plans, then it becomes much less likely that the persons will subscribe. So one of the things that we should do is to lobby or to support the government in efforts to make it much easier for persons to subscribe, persons who are self-employed or who are informally employed, to subscribe on their own, to be able to enter into arrangements to contribute to the NIS. That's one. But as we discussed earlier, you have to, if you want a big nest egg at retirement, you have to contribute a certain amount, because investment returns will only realistically be so high. And I think we should really expect to put aside 10% of our income for retirement if we want to ensure that we have a suitable nest egg or a sizable nest egg at retirement. I think 10% is a good figure. Sometimes that 10% could be part from the individual and part from the employer, but somehow 10% should go in. If it's less than that, and of course it should be all the time, because a lot of times what happens in Jamaica, or what happens in Jamaica, is persons contribute to a pension plan, they leave the company or they leave that employment, and they take their the funds that have been accumulated at that employer and go and do something else with it. Pay down on a home, children's education, trip abroad, whatever, new TV, whatever it is. But whatever you do with those funds, as long as they are taken away from the purpose of being put aside for retirement, then it's almost as if the person has to start again for their retirement. And that makes it less likely again that they will have enough when the time comes for them when their income no longer is as sizable as it once was. So another thing we should do is stop that practice, prevent persons from having the option of taking their accumulated pension contributions,
Thank you.
or make it much more, provide for a penalty if they do take
They
it.
do take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as you start earning income, set aside 5 to 10% of that income for your pension fund, retirement or your retirement. And you should do that using an individual retirement account if your employer does not have a formal pension plan.
Yeah.
Typically, in the old days, there used to be a phrase called a three-legged stool for preparing for your pension plan. And you're preparing for your retirement. One leg of the stool you can assume to be based on the pension plan of your employer. Of course, that assumes that the employer has a pension plan. The second leg of the stool is the contributions to NIS. And the third leg of the stool is your other contributions somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's what was called the three-legged stool. So I think the main point or the big point of that suggestion is that don't rely on only one source of savings for your pension plan or for your retirement. So my advice to young people would be to save as much as you possibly can right through your career and delineate those savings according to type, such as for retirement, saving for the down payment of my home or my car, or an emergency. You should always have an emergency fund, probably a year's salary, 6 months' salary, that is put aside, that if you have the fridge broke, conked out, or you had a hurricane and it damaged, minor damage to the home, things that you can't foresee, that you should have that for that purpose. And then, of course, your retirement for that purpose, and then the other things, saving for the down payments on home, for instance. But if you use the retirement funds for the home, then you can't expect to have adequate period of retirement. It's those kind of rules that we have to follow. A lot of times we don't save, and then when persons don't save, and then when they reach retirement and they don't have enough funds, they are critical of the state, of the government for not providing them with a pension. But the fact is that our lives, our own, we have to have individual responsibility. The final thing I would say is, if you help people in your life without the expectation of reward, it is likely that when you need help, you'll get the help from unexpected places.